you want to share something from anywhere, doesn't have to be this live, from anywhere that you see some content that you really appreciate, go ahead and do that and tag the person. That's a very valuable piece of social media gratitude.
Absolutely.
Let's jump right into it.
Well, before we do that, let us perhaps introduce ourselves today.
I'll introduce you.
Okay. I'll give you the solo screen. There you go.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for being here with us. We truly appreciate your time and your comments. I would like to introduce my BU Network partner. You know what branding is, right? So I have branded Dr. Joe Piazza, Dr. Energy. Now, if you're wondering why, just hang out a little bit more if this is your first time with us and feel it. Like, sit with what you've got going on here and then tell me if that's a good brand for him or not. Dr. Energy is my business partner for 8 years. And in BU Network and podcasting, we just jumped into it. It's like we put on a parachute, we went into a plane and we said, let's go. And that's how we got into podcasting and live streaming. And we decided, not like we could do it. It's that good. It's that easy. We just said, we'll do it. We'll figure it out on the go. And the interest that we had was there. And Dr. Energy doesn't stop. He's always continuously adding and growing this business. So when you see something new, know that it is not done without conversations worth having.
Yes.
Meetings, trials, some tribulations, and sometimes is jumping out that plane and pulling the parachute. So please welcome, put a round of applause together, a Zoom or a StreamYard applause for Dr. Energy.
Thank you, Catherine. Sometimes I wonder when I jump out of that plane, I have to actually check that I remembered to put the parachute on. And there's sometimes when I think I forget. So, all right, let me introduce Catherine. Catherine Rara Asaro Myers. I wish I could say that I was able to brand Catherine as Rara. It wasn't me. It was her grandson, Rara. She is his Rara, and Rara is in the house. Originally from Brooklyn, New York, you may hear the accent come out from Catherine every once in a while, and you'll definitely feel that Brooklyn, New York aspect of Catherine. She's very direct, and she's going to tell you she's going to tell it to you the way she sees it, and that's the way it is. And if you can deal with that, great. And if you can't, well, deal with it. As Catherine mentioned, we've been business partners for 8 years in BU Network, and we definitely jump in sometimes without looking, feet first, and just start going with the flow and adapt and on the fly. And Catherine is really good at doing that. She's great at helping us find what works, what doesn't work, where the potential weak points in the chain are, and how we can then fix them so that everything works seamlessly and well. So that is Catherine. She's good at breaking stuff.
I'm good at finding the inconsistencies and then figuring out how to fix it. Yeah, if you want to know if something works or not, as on The Voice. Oh my gosh, what's his name? The country guy, and he did this. Can you believe I forgot his name?
Country.
Yeah, big famous country guy. He's like, all right, somebody's going to type it in. Somebody who's the big country guy on The Voice, and he goes like,
oh, Blake Shelton.
Blake Shelton. Oh, there we go. Shout out to Blake Shelton. So he's made that little finger thing.
I don't watch that very often.
Neither do I.
Watch it for about 5 seconds at a time because, anyways.
Blake Shelton, though, I have to tell you, he's a little bit on the eye candy side. So anyway, moving right along to what let's not procrastinate. Let's not take our time. Let's take the next step today.
So the next step is when you have questions, because I know you've got questions, put a Q in front of it and drop it in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. We're going to cover the content first and then we'll answer the questions at the end so that we can make sure we keep this tight and give you all the information that you need to
Love
not
that.
procrastinate. So put a Q in
Love
front
the
of your
format.
questions, drop them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. We'll collect them and we'll go through them all at the end.
Right.
So-
and if you can't stay till the end, we'll still get to your question because your question will be in the chat. So that question might be useful for someone else who was perhaps too shy. I don't think you're shy if you're here to ask it.
And you'll have to, so you just have to watch the replay.
Right. Awesome. Without any further ado,
Go for it.
you're not lazy. You're scared. How to finally stop procrastinating. Okay, here it is. Be honest. Do you struggle in getting things started or completed? Do you tell yourself, I'll get to it? Yet you find yourself binge watching an entire season of, I don't know, what do people watch these days? Person of interest. Whatever show you want to watch. Yeah. I don't know what's trending because I don't watch a lot of TV.
No.
You're not alone. Let me give you some facts about what Psychology Today says. Procrastination is a common human tendency. For the occasional offender. That's really funny. Finding the willpower to buckle down and power through is usually enough to boost productivity and focus on accomplishing the task at hand. While everyone may procrastinate, not everyone is a procrastinator, says Joseph Ferrari, a psychology professor at DePaul University, leading research on the subject and author of Still Procrastinating, the No Regrets Guide to Getting It Done. Ferrari says, we all put tasks off, but his research has found that 20% of U.S. men and women are chronic procrastinators. Dr. Energy, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I'll get to it tomorrow. Come back to me. No,
I'll come back to you later. Let me circle back.
There's a lot of people do procrastinate. My a quick little story is my dad used to call me, he had a little nickname for me, Professor Damani, as he used to call me.
Later.
Yeah, meaning professor, I'll get to it later. I'll do it tomorrow, as Damani is a sort of a slang Italian for tomorrow, as in mañana in Spanish or later in English, that kind of thing. So I have been known to procrastinate on things in my life. So no stranger to this topic whatsoever. So, yeah.
That's funny. I being married as many times as I am and divorced, I never procrastinate. I just get to it. I'm like, okay, but that is not a reflection of my marriage or my husband. It's not. It has to do with the fact that I don't necessarily have that gene. I must put some things off,
Right.
But as a general rule, it might be a trained behavior that I have. I want to check the box, man. Like I want to be in action. You know how action puts you out of doubt, and doubt puts you out of action. I am really comfortable in that state of uncomfortable newness. That's my zone. So let me read a little bit about guilt.
So before you do that, I'm just going to jump in there with a little bit about
go ahead.
telling somebody to just do it, right? This is what we tell people who are procrastinating. For those of us who get frustrated with people who procrastinate, because I do actually get frustrated with other people and their timelines as well. But telling somebody who's procrastinating to just do it is kind of like, as Dr. Ferrari says, is like telling a depressed person to just cheer up. It's about the same effect. So it's not really time management, it's about coping. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
I'm glad you said that while I was fixing my screen. So you want me to pick up not at time management, you want me to pick up at coping without knowing where you want me to go. Psychologists have discovered that procrastination is not a time management. Okay, we're not going there. So the shame and guilt, but the shame and guilt of not doing what we should be doing can make us procrastinate even further. So think about guilt and shame. Like, I don't want you to hang out there too much, but creating a vicious self-defeating cycle. And what makes procrastination so harmful is that the tasks do not go away. Think about that. Eventually, you're left with the task to complete, the negative emotions again, plus the added stress of a time constraint. Let me skip over to, so what's a chronic procrastinator to do? The next time you don't feel like doing something, let me give you these tips. I'll high level them and then we'll come back and talk about it. Acknowledge why you've been avoiding it. Number one. Number two. Forgive yourself for procrastinating. Number three, just get started. Okay, Dr. Energy, let's dig into acknowledge why you've been avoiding it. And you here? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm here. I was just I was typing, so I was trying
Okay.
to. So if you want to dive into the acknowledge why
let
you've
me
been
do
avoiding,
that.
and I'll keep typing here, and then
Absolutely.
and I'll add my 2 cents worth.
Moving right along. You're not lazy, you're scared. When we procrastinate, I can hear you typing.
Yep.
We're avoiding the unpleasant feelings that accompany the task at hand. Procrastination is rooted in fear of failure, of success, of not being perfect. And fear is a powerful emotion. We feel anxiety when we are pushed to do things that make us uncomfortable. So naturally, we avoid them at all costs. But when we try to get rid of the negative feelings by, say, scrolling our social media feeds, it's only a temporary fix. By facing your emotions, you can begin to manage them.
Absolutely. And one of the big things about when you avoid those emotions for something that feels good instead, those emotions are going to come back even stronger. It's like anything else in life. The more we try to push it down, the more it's going to try and push up. Right? We know this from physics. For every let me just put my hand in the screen, go to the widescreen. So for every action that pushes, there's an equal and opposite reaction pushing back the other way. So the more we try to push down our emotions, the more the emotions push up and want to be acknowledged and expressed. So by procrastinating, you're going to end up, easy for me to say, you're going to end up feeling those emotions even stronger than if you just acknowledge them in the first place and then started to push through them, or acknowledge them, be with them, and then start to take action.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me give you this aspect and then you can give us another perspective. Sure. Is that okay with you? Okay.
Of course.
So here's what some of the smart people say. They found that other smart people say people who are prone to procrastination are overall less compassionate towards themselves. Okay, think about this. If you're a procrastinator, you're probably less compassionate towards yourself. One of the most effective things that procrastinators can do is to forgive yourself for procrastinating. In a study, students who reported forgiving themselves for procrastinating on studying for a first exam ended up procrastinating less for a second exam. Researchers say employing self-compassion works because procrastination is directly linked to negative feelings. You think about that when you're procrastinating, click, link to negative feelings. When you forgive yourself, you will reduce the guilt you feel about procrastinating, eliminating one of the primary triggers for procrastinating.
Triggers this way.
Right. Yeah.
So this is a huge thing. Is basically we're saying cut yourself some slack. One of the things that I like to teach in my practice in the office is something we call AAA or A cubed or A3, however you want to talk about it. And the three A's stand for awareness, acknowledgement, and acceptance. So awareness first is about becoming aware of the emotions that we're feeling about why we're procrastinating and getting honest with ourselves which leads into acknowledgement, acknowledging that we are feeling fearful or upset or afraid or whatever it might be about what the actions are that need to be taken. And then the acceptance is the forgiveness aspect. And when we get to that point, I acknowledge that I've been procrastinating because I'm afraid, because I think that I think I'm not good enough, or I'm afraid that people are going to judge me, or I don't have enough time, or which is a conundrum in and of itself. And I choose more. I choose to move through this anyways to what it is I want to create in my life. That's the forgiveness aspect, because then it empowers us to make a choice, and we have choice in every single moment to move forward, to acknowledge the fear, to acknowledge what we're feeling, accept it, and then we can move on.
Now, Dr. Energy, do you ever meet some of those people who are chronically late? And there's an excuse. Yeah. Okay.
Used to be me.
Yeah. Every single time it's like, oh, my computer didn't work, or, oh, there was traffic. Okay. We're not really hearing that anymore, but
No.
there's always something. I'm feeling this. I did that. I experienced that. It was someone else who did that.
Right.
I want you to listen to these signs when you hear these from other people. Okay. We won't necessarily have you think about yourself at this moment. Think about other people. When you hear these excuses and these things that happen, and it puts you in a compromising position, like you now will be late for the next thing because someone else had a very valid reason why they just couldn't get everything on time. And you might have a timed session. You just might be on a schedule, man. That's just the way it is. It's the way it goes. If you find that you are compromised because of that, you have a choice. And I want you to think about your choice. If someone comes to you with an excuse, you have a choice to buy into that story or stay in your own.
Right. That's about setting boundaries, right? To some degree, I'm very, especially these days with running a practice, professional practice, plus running this business, our time is very valuable, like everybody's is. And if somebody is going to be late, look, you had 15 minutes of our time, or 30 minutes of our time, you used up 15 minutes of it because you're late. Book another session. It might be 3 weeks from now. And if it's that urgent, then that's not my problem. I've got other appointments to get to. And there's occasional leeway there. And where are you going to maintain those boundaries, especially if it's somebody that does it consistently? I give them a couple of chances, and then after that, it's sorry, you've lost my trust, and it's going to take a lot to build it back up.
So I invite you, as you're listening today, if this is new to you, to be aware of this. If you are thinking, well, I have a friend or I have a client who's always late, and I'm just going with it. I just booked the next appointment half an hour later because I know they're late. I invite you to have your story, not to take on the story of someone else. Now, maybe they won the lottery and they're flying high and you want to buy that story. We do that. We energetically take on other people's stories. In the conversation of procrastinating, you have a choice to handle it however you wish. You can give people as many chances as you want. You can draw boundaries. You cannot draw boundaries. So just remember, please remember that whatever story you buy into, you now bring that into the next place. I'll go this way, the next place that you go. And if you're then connected with someone who's on a time schedule, you may ultimately be the recipient of someone who is buying into procrastination. So if you yourself are not a procrastinator, but you're one of these very empathetic, easygoing, it's okay, and you bring it into I invite you, really want you to look at this. Look at it hard, because you may not recognize it at this moment. So it's raising awareness, bringing us to, you want to go to
the third point, just get started.
I feel like I didn't cover forgive yourself, but we did. Okay. Yeah, I know. I feel like I didn't hear that enough. Just forgive yourself. Okay. I feel the need to say this. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Reduce the guilt. That's a way to get out of it. Otherwise, you will sit in it. And we don't want you to sit in that guilt. So if you're late, or if you know someone who's late, teach them to forgive themselves. Okay, just get started. That's where we're at. Smart people say, other smart people other than all of us here today, most of us mistakenly, this is important, believe that our emotional state has to match the task at hand. Well, do you ever see a bride crying? But the truth is that you'll rarely feel like it. You will rarely feel like it, nor does it matter. Other smart people say, ignoring how you feel and focusing instead on what the next action should be, get over it, rather than telling yourself, just do it, which can be overwhelming. Say, just get started, rather than telling yourself, just do it, just get over it. Say to yourself, I'll get started, because that's really the next step. If the next step is to clean my bookcase, rather than fixing my whole room, if that's the next step, I just got started. And that's how you can look at it. One step at a time. Breaking down the tasks into easily accomplished steps. What I just demonstrated. Even completing a relatively small action will help you make progress. Feel so much better about the task. This increases your self-esteem. I feel so much better now, which in turn reduces the desire to procrastinate and make ourselves feel better. The simple swap shifts your attention from emotions to action so you can finally finish what you started. Now, granted, you might have a large room full of boxes. You might have to do your taxes. You might have done your taxes. You might have to clean your closet. You might have to empty your food pantry. You might be renovating your house. I understand the tasks at hand are not always this simple. It may not be like that. Whatever it is, until you do the next step, until you take the just get started step, you will never know.
Good points. So let me just add on to that a little bit. The whole idea of just getting started is huge. Now, we were talking there about ignoring your emotions and just getting started. I don't recommend ignoring emotions. Easy for me to say. I invite you to be aware of the emotions and acknowledge them and then just get started. So that's the acceptance part, accepting that those emotions exist in the moment and then get started. As we talked about before, action takes us out of doubt, and doubt will take us out of action. As soon as we start doubting what we're doing, we're going to stop acting. And as soon as we start acting, we get moving, we start to build some energy, we start to build a structure, things start to flow more easily, and we get into that flow state. Now, one of the things you can do, this is what I have done, we've talked about this in a past episode, is something called power sessions. And I block out 3 to 5 power sessions per day in my week. And I have a defined time limit on each of those power sessions. And I set a timer on each of those power sessions so that I know that 100% of my focused attention, my energy is focused on that task in that moment. And at the end, when that timer goes off, I actually celebrate. I give a fist pump or a yes or a woohoo, and I celebrate it. And this creates a signal to myself that, hey, we got something done. And that releases a certain set of neurotransmitters or chemicals in the brain that makes us feel good. And our brain likes that feeling. Our body mind likes that feeling, and we want to feel it again and again and again. So by celebrating accomplishing small tasks, it sets up a new pattern of behavior, a new energy in the system. We move from problem, which is the procrastination, to not problem, meaning, oh, I'll get to it later, I don't want to procrastinate, to a solution was, I'm celebrating all of my wins, even the small ones. And that sets up a new self-rewarding cascade within our body-mind chemicals and our nervous system, which then leads us into a whole new set of behaviors. And that's how we build new habits, and we can overcome the fear of procrastination that's associated with it. So there's one of the tips that I would highly, highly recommend.
I'll add another tip in terms of pushing away emotion. And sure, you could ignore it, and that could be one way of pushing it under the carpet. You could acknowledge it, but let's talk about you don't want to do it. So let's just say that this book were filled with things to do.
So just before you get to this, this is actually answering a couple of questions in the comments.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
so we're on. So we might as well just jump right into the question. So Jay actually asked something about this, and Cindy actually says tasks she doesn't like to do, like trying to fix her website. So.
Oh, okay. So for example, in my case, I'll have a book, and in my book, I write things down. I also use Brendan Bouchard. So in the case of, I'll write down everything that I have to do. I'll jot it down. I won't put it as a to-do list, but I'll keep it as a running. Oh, I just want to give you an idea, because I don't use any special format. You can't see it because of the lighting. I just write everything down. I draw, I write, everything is in there. Then it's off my head. I do not have to think about it anymore because it's there. So during the course of the day, aside from my Brendan Bouchard book, which is extremely powerful for me, I'll go through it. So if I something I don't want to do, but I wrote it down, I'll look at when do I want to do it. And I also reward myself. So for example, if I'm looking at a weight, like I might write down exercise and I want my weight to be a certain weight, or I will put a reward for that. Buy myself a new pair of jeans when I get to 136 pounds. Wow. What does that mean? Well, maybe today I can't do that, because maybe today I'm 5 pounds away from it. But I will look at that reward knowing that I will put down what I want to work on and work towards. It doesn't mean it's my laundry list of today's things to do. That means that how am I feeding the goal? How am I contributing to my goal of getting to 136 pounds or buying a new pair of jeans? What am I doing today for that? Am I going to sit in my chair for 12 hours? Because at the end of the day, I won't really look like I've done anything. So I'll check it off. Like, yeah, I did. I had this many calories, or I did this many moves, or this many steps. I put it down. If I don't want to do it, if I don't like doing it, it ends up in the book anyway. And then I see if there's a fun way to address it. So I'm not looking at the questions, Dr. Energy.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm giving my book. And this happens to be my dream book. And I have many of these books. So what I do is I free form it, put it there. And then, of course, if there's something that I really don't like to do, I'll ask for some accountability help. Like, hey, Dr. Energy, you want to help me out here with this? I really don't want to do this, but can we give me a time? Tell me the date and time. That really helps. So let's go to the questions now.
So let's start answering some of the questions. So Christine actually said as well about simply don't like the task at hand. For her, it's paperwork. Cindy mentioned that she doesn't like fix her website. She likes the learning. She doesn't enjoy learning about website design, so she puts it off. So for both Christine and Cindy, you could delegate. Find yourself a virtual assistant, or find somebody you can hire to do that work for you. That is a totally valid way of doing it. Now, for me, I like to be able to meditate. There's our weekly reminder coming again in a moment. There.
Here's your reminder. Meditate.
Okay, so meditation is a great way of dealing with procrastination as well, because it helps you build the ability to be in the present moment, to just be present with what is, and then move with that. So that's another little tip. So delegate, you can delegate what you do. You can hire somebody to do the work for you. I personally like to have my fingers in the website stuff. I did all the back end work on the BU Network website with input on design from Catherine and how we wanted it to flow and all that kind of stuff. I enjoy doing that. There's going to come a time when it's going to be too much with everything else that we're doing that we're going to need to delegate it, and I'm okay with that. However, by becoming familiar with it first, and paperwork, I'm right with you, Christine. I don't like paperwork either. When it comes time to delegate it, now you know what is the end result you would like to have as a result of that work being done. So when you do offload it to somebody else, you can give them explicit directions on how it needs to be done, how you would like it done, so that it achieves the goal that you have set for it. So that's one of the things you can do.
I'll add to that. So if there's something that you don't like doing, take a look at your timeline. In the course of your day, do you actually have time to do it? You can want to build a website, but if you don't have time to build it, or if you don't make time to build it, if you don't have time to make it a priority. So for us, it was a primary goal to do that. So we'll talk about you. You don't want to do that paperwork, or Cindy, you don't want to get to the website. If your timeline doesn't have that built in, then that tells us something. If we don't have website design or administrative, Christine, maybe it's paperwork. If it's not in our timeline, then we are not allocating any energy towards it. And if we're not putting any energy towards it, then for sure it's going to be one of those things that just sort of nags at us like, I can never get that done. Well, I know that I will eat, I will walk, I will be on my live. This takes a chunk of our time. Mm-hmm. It's in my schedule. I am prepared prior. And even if I have a meeting, which I do every single Thursday at 12 sharp, I'm prepared for that meeting before I get on this live. So I invite you to look at if your timeline has any space allocated for the activity that you're saying you have no time to do and you don't like doing it. Maybe it really doesn't live in your world.
Right. And yes, Cindy, you're right. Sometimes people aren't in a financial position to be able to pay somebody to do it, and you have to do it yourself. And in that case, it's like we were talking earlier, we just have to get started. We just have to acknowledge that we don't like doing it for whatever reason it is, whatever emotions are coming up, and then do it. And scheduling it, putting it in our timeline, even if it's only 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes twice a day, you're going to take those small steps, celebrate that 10 minutes or 15, whatever time you devote to it. So you're at least giving it some attention, some energy, and then it's not just sitting in the back of your mind like an open tab in your browser, taking up resources and attention. So,
well, let's add to that. Let's give a shout out to Xanthi. For example, Xanthi gives free advice on YouTube about WordPress.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to give you this as a resource. You may not know what she's doing today because maybe you don't really follow her, but get in touch with Xanthi. For example, she's giving free advice on websites. Tell her where you're at. See where she did that in her YouTube, and then catch that. Let's put a link to Xanthi. We're actually going to be chatting with her later today.
Yeah.
So yeah, she'll be a guest on our podcast. So I recommend looking for delegating. Doesn't necessarily mean hiring. It could mean pulling in an accountability partner for someone who gives away. We're giving free content here. This may or may not be part of your learning, but it is if you're here. So where do you get free content? So if that's not in your wheelhouse, then your timeline doesn't have free content. And if you have time to be here and we're giving you value, then where do you go when you have to get something else done? Not asking you not to be here at all. I'm just saying that if you're here because you like what we're doing, there could be other people that have things that you like that you could then put into your business. And that's bringing us in as an accountability partner because you're following us. So go ahead and follow Xanthi because she has some great stuff. Christine, regarding the paperwork, get an accountability partner. See if that helps. Like just get somebody who's strong and says, every time that you say you do that and then you come up with something fun and funny. I used to like buying things, jeans, lipstick. I promote, Christine, shout out to you in your Aubon business. I like to promote buying myself some makeup when I get something done. Or let's give a shout out while you're typing to Carolyn Jackson. give yourself a Bowen therapy session if you want to promote yourself or you want to reward yourself. Actually, just go and give yourself something as soon as you achieve it. All right. Any other questions?
Right. So there's a few other questions. So let me just roll back up here towards the top of our. So Jay asks, what if procrastination to others might not be procrastination to me? Because there are valid reasons to back this up. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I kind of have the gist of. It's kind of like what's stressful to me is not stressful to you. So what's procrastination to me may not be procrastination to you. That's kind of what I'm getting from this question.
It's like, honey, take out the garbage now.
Right.
Honey, take out the garbage now. Honey, why can't you take out the garbage? Because they don't pick it up till tomorrow morning. Why can't you take it out now? So that could be one type of scenario. Pick up your toys. Why should I pick them up? I'm going to play with them all over again. So it's more about how we feel about procrastination, about ourselves. And then if we think somebody else is procrastinating, well, what, like you said earlier, we can give an awareness and have a conversation about it. Right. We want to have an understanding.
You might just need to have, because I know, Jay, you asked a further question down below about what if one person's procrastination is affecting your own ability to get things done. Well, that's a bigger issue, clearly, where you're going to have a conversation with that person and say, okay, why is this happening? What is it why isn't this happening? How can we set up structures or situations that we can get this all done? How can we move it forward? What is the piece that you're missing in order to get this done? Something like that, but it's going to have to be a bigger conversation to get things done.
Hey, Joe, we fall right into that. We're not. So think about this. If somebody asks you to do something and they're not doing it, is it procrastination or is it not in their system? So specifically to you, Jay, there is something that we have to put into our system in order to get back to you. So that may be perceived as procrastination. And that's a great example of saying, what is it? Is this not the system that works for you? So let's have that conversation with you, Jay, about the questions that we have at hand. Thank you for bringing that up.
So Jay also asked about, and so Cindy said, other people procrastinating drive her nuts, and I can understand that. And again, remember that there might be more going on for that person that we don't know about, right? One of my favorite stories I like to say to people is, if all of us took all of our stuff that's happening behind the scenes in our life that nobody else knows about, and we think of it like a bunch of kids out playing hockey in the street, and they all, everybody throws their stick in the middle, and then you separate them out into two teams so you can see all the hockey sticks in the middle. So imagine we all threw our hockey sticks in the middle, and we saw everybody else's stuff. I don't know anybody that would voluntarily pick up somebody else's stuff to deal with it. We'd more than often than not, more happily pick up our own stuff again and say, okay, now I have empathy and compassion for everybody else and what they're going through, because we never know what somebody else is going through. What we see is not what's actually going on. It's like a duck paddling, right? Underneath the surface of the water, the duck's feet are going crazy, but on top, everything looks calm and smooth. So
I see Xanthi's here with us. Yes, Xanthi, we are talking about you. You hear your name because we are. Shout out to you. Cindy Mount, please speak to Xanthi. Xanthi, please speak to Cindy Mount. Cindy Mount.
Yes.
WordPress, web design.
So let me just think. There was something else in here in the questions. Jay, I also asked about how to identify exactly that procrastination is really procrastination and not something else. Would you like to handle that?
Oh, sure. I wasn't sure if you wanted.
Yeah.
So
I'll add my 2 cents, but
yeah. How do I identify it? I ask. I'll say, are you doing this? Are you not doing it? Is there a reason you're not doing it? Can you let me know? Is it something you don't like? So if someone says, look, I just don't want to do it. So I'll give you a live example, Jay. My husband and I work on, we work on a different sort of time schedule. I'm the right now, not now. I'm right now. That's the way I do everything. Right now. And he'll do it a little bit like I'll do it and I'll get to it. So if I mention something, I hear you tapping away, Dr. Energy.
Okay.
So if I ask him something and he doesn't answer me right away, I know his MO. I know his modus operandi. So I won't expect. I believe that when we know the person we're communicating with and we know what they're like, he's not disrespecting me. It's not like I asked him, oh, honey, could we have a cup of coffee? And he gives it to me 4 hours from then. It's not that. It could be about walking across the property to take out the garbage. I want to know the person I'm talking to. I want to understand the communication, and then I don't want to make any assumptions. I would like to be an informed, judgmental person.
Right. Yes. So the big, you mentioned two huge words in there that we often don't acknowledge or are aware of the energy behind them and how they affect our lives. And that's assumptions and expectations. So there's that fun little saying, oh, you know what assuming does, it makes an A out of you and me. And it really is true, because an assumption means you are trying to mind read what somebody else is thinking or what's going on for them. And we have no idea usually what's going on for somebody else, as I mentioned. And expectations is usually our expectations. We expect everybody else to behave and act and think the same way we do. And that just isn't the case. That's one of the biggest fallacies that we have in life, that most people have. One of the delusions, I guess, or filters that lenses that we see the world through. So when we expect somebody else to act or behave the same way as we do, and then they don't, yes, we're going to get upset and pissed off because it didn't meet our expectations. So I invite you. So I had heard a great, I'm going to leave the invitation for a moment. I heard a great quote one time that expectations are just predetermined resentments. In other words, when you have an expectation of somebody and then you're expecting them to live up to your ideals and they don't, then you're going to start resenting them for not doing that. So then you need to start having a conversation. So I invite you to have these conversations with people. And one of the great ways you can have a conversation is, this is what I'm understanding from what you're telling me. Is this the case? And if they say yes, then great. You say, okay, explain a little bit more. If they say no, then explain to me what I'm missing. So now you're having a dialogue with somebody rather than just telling them something. So I invite you to do that.
And to add on to that, this is important. When you ask someone a question and then they answer you, you want to confirm that they heard what you said and that you heard what they said. You know how you want to just get to the next point? And just let me just tell you, when you didn't do that, then you didn't do that. And, when you didn't do that, that's why I feel like if we're not having that real dialogue, take a deep breath, do what Alexa says. Oh, I shouldn't have triggered her. And do your meditation. Ask you a question. I ask you a question. You tell me what you heard. Yes, that's what I said. Then you take your next turn. If I am assuming all over the place, that's sort of like throwing up all over somebody. I'm sorry to be so say it like that. But in communication, you really want to open it up. If you're having a chronic communication problem, you're probably going to have that with everybody. I doubt you're having it with one person.
There's so many tools you can use out there to learn how to communicate more effectively. One of our favorites here is it's quote unquote sales. It's called The Perfect Close by James Muir. And although it is a sales technique, it's a great communication technique that you can use with your partner. Would it make sense to blah, 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 blah? And then you allow the person to respond. So that's
the reason is, right? We're taking it away from the task. We're bringing it onto time. So Dr. Energy, would it make sense for us to take care of that laundry list of things to do today? And now you're thinking,
no, I'm kind of busy today, but I've got some time in my schedule the next couple of days. Let's look at our schedules and see where there's a match. Great.
Now we went right to not this big laundry list that, oh my gosh, I don't want to do, okay, not today, but let's do it then. So would it make sense, takes it off the task and brings it to the timeline?
Right.
And would it make sense for us to talk about dinner now? No, let's talk about it later. Awesome. Whatever it is, it's not like, no, I don't want to talk to you about dinner. I'm not talking to you anymore. Would it make sense? So James Muir, he was a guest on our podcast. Yeah. Speaking of.
Yes, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second. Tease.
Mm-hmm.
So another great resource is called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. I think it's Rosenberg. And it is he has taken this technique into the inner city gangs in Oakland, California and other high-risk areas. He's used it all over the world, and it's a wonderful way to feel heard and feel seen by the person you're communicating with. When you said this, I felt, rather than saying, when you said, you make me feel blah, 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 blah. It's when you said this, I felt this. So now you're taking responsibility for how you feel yourself, rather than blaming somebody else for how you feel.
Accomplishing small.
And that's a big difference. And then the other person isn't going to get their defenses up, because as soon as we say to somebody, you made me feel blah, 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 boom, their defenses up. And now there's not great communication. Whereas if we can keep the defenses, the walls down by saying, when you said this, I feel this. And if you could say it in this way or communicate with me in this tone, as Catherine mentioned about knowing your partner's communication style and where and how to communicate in that style is going to make a huge difference.
Now, if you're Sicilian, throw all this out the window.
We just yell at each other, and we accept that.
The loudest person gets heard, and the one throwing things is the one that gets the attention. So if
Right.
you're Sicilian, this does not apply to you.
Right. And Sicilian from New York, forget about it.
Oh, forget about it. You talking to me?
You're talking to me.
I'm not done talking.
Wait a minute. Do you find me amusing?
Oh, we can talk
To
about
do
our
another movie
school-
reference.
Our sculabastas. We can talk about all the words that we make up.
It's funny you mentioned that. I just had a conversation with a patient yesterday about the bacausa.
Oh, right. Or
Right.
bacala.
The bacausa. Bacausa is the back of the house. It means the outhouse. So when bathrooms used to be outdoors, it's a very Sicilian slang for the bathroom. The bacau. I remember my great grandmother used to say bacausa. And I'm like, what the hell is that?
And if you're Sicilian, when you insult someone, you call them a dead fish. Or you call them a stupid fish, or you call them an eggplant or a gagoots. So when you're Sicilian, you
I forgot about that one.
you call people inanimate objects, so that you're like, what are you? Instead of saying, like, what are you, stupid? You say, what are you, a gagoots? What's the matter with you? What are you, a squash?
What's the matter? What's the matter for you?
Yeah. So communication is different when we're talking about that.
So Christine, I would leave out when you said this, I felt this, was that your intention? I would leave out the was that your intention, because now the walls come up a little bit. And take it more on yourself. So when you ask, was that your intention? It has to my mind, to the energy of that feels a little bit like you're putting it back on me and blaming
aggressive.
me. It's aggressive. It's sort of a passive aggressive way of saying I'm blaming you, versus just saying I felt this. I would appreciate if you could communicate it in this way. Is a slightly different way.
And then you have to wait for the response. So it's like, Joe, what did you mean when you said I was a gagoots? And now you tell me. And I go, oh, you mean you think that I'm acting like that, so I'm not behaving? And then you tell me yes or no. So once you tell me, I sort of spit it back at you. It's my term. I reflect.
Reframe it, right.
Yes. So that way you get to agree. Because if I ask you the question and I push it, well, then I'm just being,
Yeah. And I know that I can feel it out there. People are going, oh my God, that's a lot of work to communicate like that. And you're damn right it is. And it's that important.
Yes.
Communicating clearly and succinctly, getting our ideas across is so important. And being able to listen to and hear what others are saying is even more important. We do have 2 ears and 1 mouth, which should tell us a lot. We hear this all the time, but it really is that important. So we really need to listen more than we talk. It's that simple.
Let me drill it down to going to Tom's ice cream in Toronto. When you go up to the counter and you say, I want a vanilla soft ice cream on a sugar cone, and you get black and white in a cup, you're like, well, that's not what I said. I said a vanilla ice cream on a sugar cone. It was simple. You're giving 2 little directions. So when you're talking to someone, if you can be crystal clear and understand if they're being receptive, think about it. It's simple as ordering ice cream.
And if you've ever noticed, on that note, when you go to a really good restaurant, they repeat your waiter or waitress will repeat your order back to you, Now, that's partly for them to remember it, but it's also telling you that they heard what your order is, especially if you have any special requests or
I'm the
changes
queen
to
of
the
that.
order. Then you want to hear that back. You want to say, yeah, okay, yes, that's exactly what. No, that's not exactly what I said. I need this, this, and this. So it gives the chance to clarify. So that's great.
Yeah, and Joe, you've been with me ordering. I think it's because they add that extra tax on to when I order food. They're like, she gets charged extra for removing all those things. Okay, what's next?
Right.
You want to talk about our podcast, or what do you want to talk
Yeah,
about?
let's jump in. So our latest podcast, why don't you preamble it, and I'll get all the links and everything going.
Okay, so I'm going to preamble it with, we dropped a brand new cast. And this podcast is with a really good friend of mine, and now a friend of ours. And we met at Rotary. And shout out to Rotary Etobicoke, because, you make relationships, right? You build them, you make them. And Michael Wood, just the day I met him, I knew he was an interesting man. And we developed a relationship by eating lunch together every day for like how many years? I don't remember, 3 years. I mean, not that we every single day, every single week sat at the same table, but every day, every week that we attended, we were there. So that built a relationship. And then we asked Michael to be on our podcast, and wow, he really gives us a lot of value. If you want to know anything about lens and seeing and looking and how people look at you, you've got to hop onto this podcast. It's live now.
Right, exactly. And just before we get into a little bit more of those things, I just wanted to address, Christine had a follow-on comment, and about saying, soften it by saying, I don't think that was your intention, so how should I interpret this? My personal way of communicating, I wouldn't even say that. I do like about the question you asked, can you help me understand what you're saying? And that I like, because it invites the person to go deeper and to go further. I try to leave any interpretation of the other person's intention out of it. And maybe I'm even doing that a little bit now, trying to interpret what you're saying. It's harder with text messages. There's some of the context is lost. And yes, context is hugely important, as you mentioned as well. Personally, I would leave questioning anything about their intention out of it. I would ask for clarification, like you mentioned. Can you help me understand what you're saying? And leave it at that.
You can do what James Muir does. Would it make sense for us to talk about this?
Right.
Let's talk about Digital Doctor. Did we finish Digital Doctor?
We finished.
Okay, so that's Michael Wood, Digital Doctor. Listen for the branding conversation in that podcast. What do you think about, is it time? I'm looking at the time. You want to buy me coffee?
Let's go have a coffee.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about it. We got some great new things happening there.
Right. So buymeacoffee.com/BU network. This type of content is completely funded by the community. So if you want to buy us a coffee, head on over to that link and buy us coffee. We'd love to have a coffee with you. We've also instituted memberships at Buy Me a Coffee. So as a member of the BU Network Buy Me a Coffee community, we are going to provide extra little videos and audios to our members only. A lot of them are going to be slightly deeper dives, or not slightly, they're going to be deeper dives into some of the questions and comments and ideas that come up during our podcasts, that come up during these live streams, questions that we get from you, our community. We're going to go deeper into them there. We also have a couple of extras set up there that can get you some product from us, or some coaching, consulting from us. As a member, you'll get a discount on those services as well. So those are some of the things that you could check out.
Awesome. And when you mentioned Christine, that's Christine Bauer. So thank you. We have two Christines are in the house. Thank you so much. So nice to see all of our friends here. Yeah. So let me just reiterate this one thing real quick about Buy Me a Coffee. We have assets there that are being, is it a fire drill? We have assets that are there that are available. So if you're presenting something and you want to have something really cool, just go over there and take a look at the asset that we're offering to create for you. Okay, conversation's worth having. You're muted.
I thought I pressed the button. Sometimes it reacts, sometimes it doesn't. Hey, Dr. Elo, great to see you here. So yeah, I think this has been a great conversation today about procrastination and some of the topics that it's brought up around communication. Perhaps this could be a future live stream talking about communication styles. If that's something that you as a community would like to hear more about, communication styles, because that's quite a deep topic and there's a lot out there from a lot of different perspectives, and we can definitely cover that from a level of representational systems, from the Colby system, from VACOG. Some of you will know what that is, the NLP style. We can talk about it from introverts, extroverts, from the DISC angle. So some of you know what DISC is. We can have that conversation. We're both very well versed in all of those different instruments of communication. So if that's something you'd like to hear, we will definitely cover that. You like that one, Dr. Elo?
I'd like to drop a little teaser for next week in case you just joined us now and you're not sure. If you're not on our mailing list, you're not getting the information about what we're going to talk about. Next week, we're going to talk about crushing it. And we're going to talk about crushing it in Zoom. So if you would like to connect with us, hop onto that mailing list. What we will do is email you once a week on the cast that we drop and the conversations that we're going to have here on our Facebook Live. So go in there, put your name, put your email address, and just start loving us, because we are loving you back.
But you love us already.
Love us already. Just a little bit more love, because we're in the loving mood. This is my birthday month.
I love you.
Now, this is the kind of conversation
Now
we have.
silly.
Dr. Energy's birthday is coming up in May. So mine was here in April. So between the months of April and May, give us a little bit more loving, because we're just these kind of people that around our birthdays, we like to give a little extra.
And it's interesting that this was not planned at all, that our talk was about procrastination today. I actually purchase a birthday reading from an astrologer that I follow, planetwaves.net, Eric Francis Coppolino, great astrologer. He has an origin also as an investigative journalist, some very great insights in astrology. And for Taurus, which I am, one of the things this year for 21-22 is about choosing to do things, being ready to choose what to do. So versus having it forced upon you. So the example that he gives is setting your cruise control at 5 miles an hour above the speed limit so you don't get pulled over, so that's acting from within and choosing, versus getting pulled over 4 or 5 times and getting tickets for going 65. Going 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour over the speed limit. So choosing to do it rather than having it enforced upon you from the outside. Choose to do it. So it's interesting that is a big theme for me in the energy of my year this year. So
I love that you do that. You're such an interesting man. So carrot again for next week, crushing it with Zoom fatigue. Oh
Yes.
my gosh, are you fatigued? Do you have any Zoom fatigue?
And I
Hang out with us.
And I think we should cover communication styles the week after, because people are asking.
Okay, so look, we just gave you 2 weeks of our schedule. Look at
There you
that.
go.
We're not procrastinating. We're giving it to you. So now, Dr. Energy,
On
when we
it.
put those emails out, let's make sure we put the right message out there, right? So we're going to crushing it, Zoom fatigue, and then communication styles. Awesome. Thank you so much. I have 60 seconds to hop on over to my Rotary.
All right. See you later.
Thank you. Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao. So I'm going to hang out here for a moment or two. I'm just going to reply to Dr. Elo here. Where you can connect is right over here at b-u.network/connect, and you can sign up for our newsletter there at the bottom of the page, and you'll get we actually have a free email series called 7 Hot Tips, where you can get some more tips on presenting and using those in your life. And you'll also get the notifications of when our podcasts drop. They drop 10:30 on Thursday morning each week. And then you'll also get the notifications for our Facebook Lives. They drop on Tuesdays.
Okay, ciao. I'm
right.
going now.
All right. See y'all.
Awesome.